I just want to do a little short video. How do you choose a news media source? So you want to stay informed about the world in such a way that improves your ability to make decisions, i.e. your functional intelligence, rather than degrading it. And a lot of the news media today seems to degrade people's intelligence. It degrades their ability to think clearly and to make decisions accurately. And I think the best way to think about it is that there are two primary measurements by which a media source degrades your ability to think rather than improving it. The first is emotional triggers, and the second is repetition. Unfortunately, most news media seems to do both of those things. And an example that comes to my mind is the subject of the Great Reset, which may or may not be a concern to some people, but what is interesting to me about the Great Reset is how it has been labeled by much of the mainstream media. It has been called, repeatedly, critically, a conspiracy theory. Now, anyone who knows what a conspiracy theory is, a conspiracy is when people plan something in secret, usually illegal, but not always. So a conspiracy is when people plan something in secret, and a conspiracy theory is when someone posits that the best explanation for a given event or action was a conspiracy, i.e., 9/11 was an inside job, or the moon landing was faked. Some people hid in the dark and planned something that the public wouldn't interpret correctly. And conspiracy theories are usually looked down upon because they tend to be unfalsifiable. Not always, and it doesn't mean they're wrong, but it does mean it's hard to verify your predictions. So, whack jobs. And by whack jobs, I mean someone who is bad at thinking. So disregard whatever political connotation you might have with the phrase whack job. But people who are bad at thinking tend to gravitate towards conspiracy theories or other unfalsifiable claims because they mistake the unfalsifiability of a theory as a strength rather than a weakness of a theory. But that's a bit of a digression. What's interesting is if you believe that the Great Reset, which has been promoted in the open by the World Economic Forum and its leadership very openly by that name, the Great Reset, for a couple years now, roughly, at least a year, and by other names for decades, was not planned in secret, obviously. It cannot be a conspiracy theory because A, it is falsifiable. Did they write these books about it? Yes, they did. It's not just not falsified, it's actually demonstrated. We're beyond not proving a negative. We actually proved a positive as far as the Great Reset. And there's nothing secret about it. Biden has recently, I guess, I haven't followed this story very closely, but pushed a bill called the Build Back Better bill. This phrase, Build Back Better, was first popularized by the World Economic Forum before it was adopted by a number of world leaders, including Justin Trudeau, among others, ahead of Joe Biden. So it clearly is a thing and is clearly influencing world leaders, at least linguistically. And so if you have, by emotional triggering and repetition, been persuaded that the idea of the Great Reset is a right-wing conspiracy theory, then your news media source has literally degraded your ability to think and to evaluate things and to use the correct words and categories for things. Now, this is true of a number of other different words. Terrorist is a big one. Racist, of course, is a very, very old one. But if your news source seems to rely rely heavily upon repetition and on emotional triggers, then consider changing your news source. I recently, personal story here, I had to stop listening to Tim Pool. I still listen to his IRL podcast from time to time because that is less intentionally repetitive and emotionally triggering than his independent videos. But I like Tim Pool. I like his content. I like his analysis. But it's still more valuable to retain your ability to think clearly and not have those emotional associations built up by emotional triggers and repetition, because those short-circuit your brain's ability to actually think through concepts conceptually. It trains you to think associatively instead. So a possible replacement for Tim Pool, or the likes of Tim Pool, would be, in my case, Scott Adams. I find Scott Adams to be an excellent source, a general source of coverage for most news. Not all, but a lot of the good stuff. And I'm sure you can find good sources around elsewhere. Another way to do it is to diversify which emotional triggers and points of repetition they emphasize. So, say you follow a right-wing person and a left-wing person. I don't find that to be as good. They'll just piss you off for different reasons. If your source of news heavily uses emotional triggers and repetition, it might be time, for the sake of your own cognitive abilities, to find a different news source, or, better yet, disengage from that national news stuff, because it's probably a lot less pertinent to your life and to your success as an individual in your local environment than you think. That's all for now.